Welcome to 10-minute Shalom Learning Center Lectorium. This is our lecture number 10, in which we focus on Judaism and its history and the history of Jewish people, which is very important and instrumental for the understanding of the New Testament, but not only the New Testament. We continue our study of Judaism and Hellenism in the Hellenistic period. And so in the last lecture, we mentioned how Hellenism developed and how Hellenism was basically a father of the modern science, and that's true, because Greek philosophy combined everything what we know today: mathematics, physics, biology, geography, geometry. All these Greek words, they were subfields of philosophy. At that particular period of time, philosophers studied everything at once. There was no narrow specialties. Pythagoras was into philosophy. He was into math, into music, and into many other things. So Aristotle, as well as Plato, and of course, besides the natural sciences, they were also studying the society and social studies. And that's more about Plato and his dialogues. But the main focus, why all these philosophers wanted to study this, was one purpose, is to comprehend the world. And that's what was different from Judaism. Because while Greek comprehension of the world was based on reason, Jewish understanding of the world was based on revelation. The word Torah did not only mean the 5 books of Moses or the scroll that Moses wrote. The word Torah comes from 2 different words. The verb yud resh he, which means to instruct, and the noun or, which means light. So the Torah itself is a very comprehensive term, which basically means divine revelation. And so it is interesting how Midrash, of course, we're talking now 5th century AD, but nevertheless, the rabbi, one of the rabbis who contributed to the Midrash, Oshaya Rabbah, asks the question, why is it that the Torah begins with letter Bet, Hebrew letter Bet? Because that's what it is. Bereshith bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. So the answer to this is Bet has 3 edges, which limits the access of an individual to understand what's above, what's below, and what's behind. Meaning, we do not know and cannot know what's in heaven above, what's underneath in the Sheol, and what's behind before the world was created. So only what we know, what happens from the beginning. Hence, in the beginning, God created. So this is the illustration of how rabbis of classical Judaism, not mystical, and of course it's a totally different subject of what mystical Judaism is, but rabbis of classical Judaism saw themselves fully dependent on what is revealed to them in the Torah. that was directly opposite to what Hellenists were about. They were about seeking the knowledge using the reason, experience, and experiment. In a way, that put Jews into a big technological disadvantage. But we know about that. Back in the old days during the Philistine Wars, Jews did not know how to hammer iron. That's why they depended on Philistines who knew how to work iron, and so had better technology coming from Greece. But Jews definitely had one indisposable resource. It's God and His power. So in the case of the 2nd century, Jews of Judea were very conservative, and so compared to Jews of diaspora who were exposed to Hellenistic civilization and had to shield themselves from the temptation of the Hellenistic religion, Jews of Judea under the Ptolemies enjoyed the autonomy and certain seclusion from what could be very tempting. But during the time of Antiochus Seleucid, the situation changed. Because Seleucids, especially Antiochus III, he wanted to rule Judea hands-on. So he sent the rulers to the towns of Judea. And when they arrived, they wanted to build mansions for themselves. As soon as they began to build mansions, they began to import some elements of comfort, such as plumbing, which required lots of work, and certain elements of ceramic, which wasn't in the available in Judea. That's just one of the examples. I don't want you to think that that was the only case. But why am I using the example of plumbing and bathrooms? Because the decoration, all the decoration of the bathrooms, bathhouses, pools, and things, which was the elements of comfort at this day and age, had certain Hellenistic touch on this. The designs, the statues of gods and simple nude statues and so forth. For the population of Judea, that was something new. But for the rich people of Judea, this was something that they wanted, because it brought new comfort, which they wanted to purchase for themselves. So they saw what the Greeks were doing, the Hellenist rulers were doing, and they began to implement it in their own houses. So what are we going to start having? The idols crept in. The idols crept into something which looked very harmless. But they started creeping in. And then, of course, when Antiochus Epiphanes IV comes in, who is fanatical about changing Judea and modernizing it and Hellenizing it, it becomes a real invasion of the pagan religion. And so it is Antiochus who brings all these things to Jerusalem which creates a big problem, and it was the testing time for Jewish people, because as we know, several centuries before, Jews fell into the pagan trap. So now we're having somewhat similar situation. And we'll discuss what happened in our next lecture.